Cool. All right, we're recording for a Photopea and Pixlr demo for portrait retouching. So first one is for photopea.com. If you go to photopea.com, so just open up a browser and put that in. I'll put that in the chat for Vivian. So it's photopea.com. Very similar to Photoshop, very similar layout. Got your tools on the left, adjustments on the top, and it can open up a lot of different file formats, which is very nice. It's got about 60% of what Photoshop can do, the actual software, but it's free and you can use it anywhere, which is pretty cool. So all you got to do is just go File, Open, and then select the photo you want to edit from home, from like your computer. So I'm just going to open up the file we're working on yesterday. So what we can do in Photopea is we're going to adjust the exposure, line up the shadows for a good portrait. I'm going to add a little bit of colors because it gets kind of washed out on Photopea. It's kind of flat. And then I'm going to clean up the skin. And then I'm going to show you guys how to add a vignette in Photopea. And if you have any questions, just write in the chat or speak up if you are here. All right, so first things first, you could go to Image Adjustments and do a levels adjustment. The problem is when we do that is it's pretty destructive. So we only have the, it's applying it just to our home layer. So what we want to do is actually duplicate the layer or work on a separate layer. So that way we can throw that layer in the trash if it ends up being not what we want. So I'm just going to close this. You can go down, so your layers are on the right. You're just going to go down to the half and half circle, click on levels. That's an adjustment layer. So it puts it on a separate layer, which is nice. So again, with levels, you can adjust your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows independently. You can also go underneath and line up your shadows or darken your highlights. So it gives you more flexibility, more control over how your photo, like how you can adjust exposure. So I'm just going to increase the highlights and the midtones and just bring up the shadows a little bit. And you can see here if I zoom in, this is before and after, right? So I'm lining up the shadows so they're not as dark, just kind of brightening it overall. So it's a good exposure. Because it kind of washes it out, I'm going to add a vibrance adjustment layer. So I'm just going to click on vibrance, add a little vibrance and saturation, just to make those colors look normal again. So if I'm happy, again, I could, the cool thing is I can click on this and keep adjusting it, and that's the benefit. If I did it the first way, then I'm limited to just that one time working on it, and then I'm kind of stuck there, right? Because it's an adjustment layer, I can keep clicking on them and keep adjusting them after the fact. So if I'm happy with how that looks, I'm just going to go to Layer and then Flatten Image. So basically, I'm going to combine it onto my background layer. Next we need to do is clean up the skin. So I'm just going to go to Layer, Duplicate Layer. Shortcut is Control-J or Command-J on the keyboard. So I'm just going to zoom in, pressing Command or Control+. And then we want to clean up the skin. So just like we did in Photoshop, we do have the spot healing brush tool. You can adjust the size and the hardness of the edge here. And so when you click on it, just give it a second, it's a little slower on Photopea because you're not using your software, it's running it through a web browser. So I'm just going to go through and use the spot healing brush tool. It should guess correct 80% of the time, but the 20% of the time, it might guess wrong. So you just want to make it a little bit bigger than what you're trying to remove, because if you ask it to do more, it might guess wrong more. So I usually just make the size a little bit bigger than the stuff I'm trying to delete and get rid of. So let's say if it guesses wrong, what you can do is to have more control, you can go to the standard healing brush. I'm just going to make it a little bigger. So how that works is you're just going to Alt or Option click on a clean area, and then your next normal click, you're basically telling it, this is where I want you to gather healing information, and then my next click will be more precise because it's saying you're having more control of what it's healing from. So I'm going to alt-click on this clean area, and then just a normal click on the other area. And you'll see it'll be a bit more accurate when I do it this way. So alt-click here, next click. So I'm just kind of helping it say, like, I want you to go from a specific area. It's going to alt-click on the clean skin here, and just paint off this hair. There we go. So just kind of, heal up any imperfections. And again, if you're shooting something that's not a person, just treat it like a portrait, clean up any scratches or smudges, that might be on your subject. If you do want to blend like we did yesterday in Photoshop, you could use the clone tool. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and bring the hardness down to 0%. I'm just going to bring the opacity down. So let's try like 19%. I'm just going to zoom in. So just like the standard healing brush, what you do is you press Alt or Option to select an area that you want to clone from, and then you're just going to paint, and so it's going to do a light, soft edge clone. So a little bit more blending. So I'm just going to Alt-click here, and then I'm just going to paint that and blend it in. So I can increase the opacity if I want it stronger. Let's go Alt-click. So it just depends on kind of like how much smoothing you want to do. But you can see here, right, you can kind of blend things out if you wanted to. So it's just something to think about or to try. There is a blur tool. So again, if you kind of want something to look more, not as harsh, you could paint with the blur tool over areas. So I'm just going to bring the strength up so it works a little quicker. Let's just zoom in. So if I had kind of like rough skin or uneven skin tones, or maybe something just looked a little too rough, I could blur it down a little bit using the blur tool. So again, try out different tools if you want. If you're happy with the skin, then just go to Layer, Flatten Image to combine those together. So if I wanted to add a vignette, it's a little different in Photopea, but you can do it. So there's no like filter you can apply. So there is a workaround. So if you just copy your layer, and if you click on the right side of the layer, so I'm on my top layer, I'm just going to double click. It's going to open up our layer style box, which gives me lots of options here. So what we want to do is click on gradient overlay. Just give it a second. There we go. So what it's going to do is basically going to put a gradient on that layer. I'm just going to zoom out. So we want to just change it. So click on gradient overlay. So we want to change it to style to radial. So basically it should have a solid color on the inside and another color on the outside. I'm just going to click reverse because I want the edges to be dark in a vignette and the inside to be white. And to get it to show up correctly, we just need to change this blend mode to multiply. And multiply blend mode basically works, whatever's white will be clear, and whatever's black will show up on a multiply blending mode. So you can change the scale of it, so you can kind of bring it further out if you need to. If it's too strong, you can also change the opacity. So you can take it down from 100% to a lighter percentage. I'm just going to keep it at 100. I think it looks fine right there. And then just going to hit OK. So this is our before and after, right? Applying that vignette in Photopea. So last thing I just need to do is just layer, flatten image, combine my layers, and then we'll save it out. So I'm just going to go File, Export, JPEG, JPG. Just going to make sure my quality is good and hit Save. And then it's going to download it to your computer. So depending on your web browser settings, it could go to your desktop or to your downloads folder. So I'm just going to put that in this folder so you can see the before and after. Let's call this, I'm just going to title it V2, like version 2, and then put it in here. Let's go here. So this is our before and after, right? So adjusting the exposure, add a little vibrant saturation, I blended and healed, added vignette, looks pretty good. Nice portrait. Any questions so far on Photopea? Guys good? So the next option is going to be Pixlr. So if you go to Pixlr, pixlr.com, just going to leave the site. So Pixlr works pretty well. It's a little more newer and snazzier, but you are limited to the size and the file type. So you can't open up any type of RAW format like Photopea, and you can't open the full size straight from the camera. It does size it down to 3,840 pixels, which is still pretty big, but it is a little smaller. So just click on Pixlr E, and then we're just going to click Open Image, and select our photo. Click Open. So choose the Ultra HD size, that's the biggest size, hit Apply. All right, if it did rotate your image, just click on Image, Image Rotation, and then you can rotate it back. There we go. So again, the cool thing about Pixlr is you do have good tool previews, so you can kind of see what each of these tools do. It's a little preview, which is very useful. And again, we do have our adjustments. So we can, do the levels adjustment just like we did. So what we want to do is they don't have adjustment layers in Pixlr, but you can just copy a layer and do your adjustments on a separate layer. So I'm just going to go Layer, Duplicate Layer. So copying my background layer, and then I'm just going to apply my adjustments on that layer. So again, I can either trash it if I don't like it. So Levels. Same sort of setup. Just going to increase my highlights, midtones, bring up my shadows a little bit, and then hit Apply. And again, you can click on these three dots. You can change the transparency so it's a lower percentage, or you can delete it. So you have more flexibility. So again, I'm just going to apply my vibrance. So let's go down to Adjustment Vibrance. Just going to increase the vibrance a little bit, get those colors popping again. Hit Apply. So if that looks good, then what we can do is just go Layer, Flatten Image, and combine them. So Layer, Flatten Image to combine. And then what we want to do is clean up the skin. So I'm just going to copy my layer, so Layer, Duplicate Layer. And then let's go into our healing tool. So there's options. You can change the size of the brush here. And I'm just going to zoom in. So again, when I click, you'll see it does like a little poof, and it basically heals up the area. So there isn't a method where you can control it. It's just their spot healing brush tool, but it is fairly accurate. You can see in your history if it messes up, you can just go back and then try it again. But it doesn't have the option where you can select where it heals from, which is unfortunate. It does have the clone stamp tool though. So if you want to directly clone, you can click on that. And so when it's on source mode, so I'm just going to adjust my brush. So I'm just going to make it a little bigger and make it super soft. And then, so let's say I want to source from here, and then it goes to paint mode. So then I can paint, and I'll start to heal up. So I'm just going to click on source, click here, and then clone that up. Sorry, I'm kind of rushing. That was not good. So I'm just going to bring the opacity down. Let's try that again, source. And then it's on paint mode. So I'm just going to kind of fill that in. Source. There we go. That looks better. So again, I'm keeping everything on a separate layer. So again, I can turn it off. So you can see the before and after. You can see what I've cleaned up and blended. You could use the blur tool as well. So there is a blur tool over here. You can put on the blur mode. You can adjust the size, all that good stuff. The strength of it. I'm just going to put it up. Oh, that's too big. One sec. Let's bring the size down. There we go. So I kind of blurred it too much. Let's just go back a couple steps. There we go. So you could soften features if you wanted to. Like maybe you got some harsh features on the face. You could use the blur tool for that. Just to kind of smooth things over. if you had some harsh features. So if you're happy with your skin retouching, just go to Layer, Flatten Image, and I'll combine those together. So last thing, this one does have a vignette filter, so go to Filter Vignette, and then you can just apply a vignette like so, and hit Apply. So it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to save this out. So go to File, Export, File, Save. I'm just going to call this thing V2, JPEG, quality's good, hit Download, and I'll save that to your computer like we did before. So I'm just going to put that in the folder. So this is our Pixlr edit. So this is our before and after. So we lined it up, got the colors back, we healed the skin, and then we applied that vignette filter. So again, this is a good crop for a portrait, right? So just make sure when you're shooting your photos, you're shooting a vertical crop. You got about mid-chest with a little bit of headroom, so you're a little closer, but it's a vertical crop. You don't want to shoot horizontal so you have all this stuff on the sides. You want to make sure you're shooting that vertical crop. So I'm just going to stop the recording.